Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. At a time when federal money for cultural instruction is disappearing, promising language revitalization efforts are launching in Alaska. Advocates are working on a new plan for instructors and a game to teach the Athabaskan language known as Denaakk'e, spoken in a large portion of central Alaska. We'll look at that and a story of a Cherokee language learner who chronicles the history and importance of the language. That's all coming up after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Antonia Gonzalez. Prime Minister Mark Carney recently held a summit with some of Canada's Indigenous leaders to address the issue of laws that allow the fast-tracking of major development projects. Dan Karpinchuk has more.
Carney was trying to ease First Nations fears about the major projects law, but many said it would take more than one meeting to build consensus on Ottawa's plans. Some have already launched a legal challenge against Bill C-5 as well as Ontario's Bill 5. Carney's Bill C-5, also called the Building Canada Act, allows his government to sidestep laws and fast-track approvals for big energy and infrastructure projects that are in the national interest. The summit, attended by hundreds of First Nations leaders, was called after Carney's government faced a backlash from chiefs who said their concerns were not being respected. But he also promised them they would be able to help build the prosperity for their communities for generations to come. The National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak, was conciliatory in her assessment of the summit.
We want to stand up for Canada against illegal tariffs. At the same time, of course, we look to make sure that no more colonialism happens within our own country. We push back on that, and just lots of work to do. And I think that we can do that by working together.
Neepanak says the issues will not be settled with one meeting, and she called for more, including a national summit of First Nations leaders with the Prime Minister. Terry Teegee is a regional chief of the British Columbia Assembly of First Nations. He says he's still on the fence.
Still a trust issue in the way the development of the actual legislation. And we see it in British Columbia as well in terms of Bill 1415, is this trust us mentality in this legislation. And as many First Nations know, that we do have trust issues with all levels of government. And that's why we wanted to be included from the start.
Much of the day was spent in panel-style discussions on meaningful consultations and economic prosperity. Carney and his cabinet ministers stayed all day, doing more listening than talking. Some chiefs said they could work with the Prime Minister, while others said they still need more convincing. For National Native News, I'm Dan Karpinchuk.
Former Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez declared his second bid for Congress Tuesday, setting up a rematch for a House seat in northeastern Arizona. KJZZ's Gabriel Pietrrazio has more on why Nez is running again.
Before this announcement, Nez admittedly mulled over launching another campaign aiming to replace his tribal successor, Navajo Nation President Boo Nygren. The next presidential election takes place in 2026.
Folks from the Navajo Nation wanted us to come home and be their president again, and it was a tough decision. But my family decided, that this is the best way to help bring unity throughout the country. And of course, Congress should look like America.
Nez is vying to become Arizona's first Indigenous congressman. In a statement, his opponent, Republican Congressman Eli Crane, said the Democratic Party has hit rock bottom by letting Nez challenge him again. He lost to Crane last year by a 9% margin, some 36,000 votes, in the state's largest congressional district by size, which is home to more than a dozen federally recognized tribes. For National Native News, I'm Gabriel Pietrrazio.
U.S. senators from New Mexico and Colorado have introduced the Tribal Access to Clean Water Act, which invests in tribal water projects. The bill increases funding through the Indian Health Service, the Department of Agriculture, and the Bureau of Reclamation to support water infrastructure and help provide clean water to Native American households that currently lack access. I'm Antonia Gonzalez.
National Native News is produced by Kawanak Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support comes from AirTalk Wireless, where individuals who qualify for the Tribal Lifeline program receive an iPhone or Samsung device, unlimited data, calls and texts, and international calling. Learn more at airtalkwireless.com/NNN.
Support by Amarant, Indian Country's 100% tribally owned insurance partner. Information on property, liability, workers' compensation, and commercial auto needs at AMERIND.com.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Even in the face of dwindling resources, teachers and other advocates are working hard to improve ways to keep their languages thriving. 2 language programs in Alaska are turning to digital technology to reach language learners. The Kanaitse Indian tribe is developing an app to aid Denaakk'e language learning, and Athabascan language supporters are teaching new instructors and building a digital language game to help bring the Denaakk'e language to school students. We'll hear about those efforts this hour and talk with a Seneca curator who uncovered long-lost Seneca language dictionaries in an unlikely place. And we're going to start with an account of how learning Cherokee inspired one man to document the history and cultural importance of his language. You can join our conversation by calling 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from Cherokee, North Carolina, is Dr. Benjamin Fry. He's an assistant professor of Cherokee language and culture at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. He is a citizen of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and the author of the book Rising Above, Language Revitalization in the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Dr. Fry, welcome to Native America Calling. Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about this journey that you've undertaken to learn the Cherokee language. What prompted you to start, and what's been the process?
Well, when I was growing up, my mom always told me that the goal in life was to find what your gift was and use it to help somebody. And so when I started learning German in high school and realized I was really good at it, I won a free trip to Germany, and I thought, well, maybe this is my gift, and who better to help than my own people, because I knew our language was endangered.
Now, did you have any relatives at home that spoke Cherokee growing up?
Not at home. My mom always told me that her mother didn't pass down the language because of the way she was treated in boarding school. She said she was punished for speaking the language, and she didn't want the same thing to happen to her children. So that was why she never brought up my mom or any of my aunts and uncles with the language. And the only phrase my mom knew growing up was "Kena, katadili higa." Come here right now. I mean it. That's what she said that meant.
So you had this almost sounds like a vision, like you wanted to learn this language, you wanted to serve your people. So how did you get started? Who did you reach out to? What was the initial step that you took?
Well, my mom's brother, Jim Eller, still lived in Cherokee, and, my Uncle David lived here, and my Aunt Sarah Rochester. So I had several family members that still lived on the Qualla boundary. And I asked my mom if I could live with my Uncle Jim for the summer and go to the Qualla Library and start learning the language there. Fortunately, our cousins, Gene and Eddie Bushyhead, were in charge of the language program at the time. Their father, Eddie Bushyhead, was a linguist, sort of in conjunction with Bill Cook, who wrote a dissertation on Eastern Cherokee in the 1970s. And my great-uncle, Robert Bushyhead, was his consultant, the fluent Cherokee speaker that Dr. Cook spoke to while writing his dissertation. And although my uncle had passed on at the time, I was able to inherit some grammar textbooks of his through my cousins Gene and Eddie. And that's where I started learning. And so basically my cousin Eddie said, here, work through this, and if you have any questions, just come ask me. So I started working. And then I was lucky enough to be able to participate in a master apprentice program with fluent speaker and traditionalist Tom Belt, who was from Oklahoma, but he had been living in North Carolina for 30 years at that point. And so he sort of served as a mentor and a guide.
I know Tom Belt, and we've had him on this show before to talk about the Cherokee language. So, Dr. Fry, here you are now, you've learned so much about the language. What has it taught you, not just in terms of the words and the phrases and the language itself, but just about your community, about your culture, about your people's history?
I think the primary thing that it's taught me is how interconnected we all are and how much we need each other and how much we support each other and have supported each other as a culture over these thousands of years that we've been here in these mountains. I mean, that was the only way we survived, was this concept of God-do-gi, everybody working together for everybody's mutual benefit, and how important that we all are to each other.
Now, the Cherokee leaders from the three different Cherokee tribes, have issued a state of emergency in response to dwindling numbers of people who can actually speak the Cherokee language. Can you tell us what is the state of the Cherokee language now? How many fluent speakers or first language speakers are there right now?
In North Carolina, among our population of first language speakers, we only have 138 remaining. And in Oklahoma, in the Cherokee Nation, I believe they have close to 1,000. So it's getting pretty dire in both places.
Okay, so EBCI 138, and remind us, what is the total enrollment there for the tribe?
We have about 18,000 enrolled members.
Okay, so about 138 out of 18,000. So tell us more about your book and how this will just foster more people to learn the language, because obviously it sounds like there is a dire need for more EBCI people to learn the language.
Yeah, absolutely. The book was mostly an attempt to explain where I came from in my process, how I went about learning the language, what obstacles I had to overcome and address, and the things I learned about joy, community interconnectedness, and the importance of our traditional culture. And so I think more than anything, I would want the book to serve as encouragement and as a bit of a roadmap for anybody that wants to pick up this project of learning the language, and a guide for how it can enrich our lives.
And the process for people there among the EBCI who want to learn the language, has it changed since you started back when you first began this journey? Is it easier, or is it different? The approach, the process, the whole methodology?
Well, I've been really impressed in the last 20 years at the progress we've made as a community. I think there are more opportunities to learn the language now than ever. There are community language classes offered in all of the townships. There's meetings in Birdtown, meetings in Wolftown if you want to go learn the language. Usually they're taught for free, and usually nowadays they're being taught by participants of the adult master apprentice programs, Dadiwoni-Si, and the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice program in Yellow Hill. So there are two Master Apprentice programs, one that's centered in downtown Cherokee and one that's centered in the Snowbird community, and that's Dadiwoni-Si, which means we will speak. And so they've been making amazing strides in learning the language and teaching the language, doing just great work. And I think they've been doing a good job of spreading it to the rest of the community as well. There's also online opportunities if people are unable to access, second language learners who are more advanced or fluent speakers. So the Cherokee Nation has created a Mango language learning software that has Cherokee on it. The Eastern Band has created an app called Shio that's available on the Apple iTunes store. And there's a really great online dictionary, CherokeeDictionary.net, that's a really great resource as well. So I think we have many more resources today than we did when I was starting around 2003.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there's some differences between how Cherokee is spoken here in North Carolina as opposed to Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. And I'm curious as to what some of the challenges are with regard to just having so low a number of speakers. And in the book, you reference the boarding school era and how so many Native people were prohibited from speaking their language. But you also mentioned some other reasons as well. Give us a little bit more detail.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think part of it was when I thought about boarding school and the kind of experience that was and what a horrible thing it was. I thought, yeah, but there had to be other factors too, because even if somebody sent me to another state and treated me horribly and forbade me to speak my language, but then sent me back, if everything in my home community was still operating 100% in my language, it would force me to go back. And so part of the book was comparing the process of language shift from Cherokee to English in Western North Carolina with the process of shift from German to English in Eastern Wisconsin. That was part of my graduate work when I was writing my dissertation. And what I noticed was that it's not just one factor. It's not just the boarding school in the case of Cherokee and Wisconsin Cherokee and North Carolina. And it wasn't just anti-German sentiment about World War I and World War II in the German-speaking communities of Eastern Wisconsin. It was much more complicated than that. It was also local businesses. It was also the prevalence of public schooling. It was also federal operations like the post office. It was banking. Basically there are all kinds of institutions with which we do business every day, and each one of those institutions is a place where language can be used. And one by one, all of those domains switched over to English over time, but it wasn't that way earlier in the life of our community. So I think that's something that we all need to be aware of. It's not just one source.
And Dr. Fryer, we got time for one more question here before we go to break. And I want to ask you, just living there and being in Cherokee, North Carolina, being in the different communities and hanging out with people, do you notice more people speaking Cherokee than when you were growing up? And if so, to what degree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I get into my head about the amount of work that we still have to do sometimes. I think, oh, there's so much to do. We really need to make a press about this. And I was at ceremony over the weekend. We did a celebration for July 19th on our stomp grounds, and I was trying to sort of lament the situation of language endangerment to somebody that was a guest that was new. And I realized that there were people speaking the language all around me while I was talking about this. And it was like, oh, well, maybe we have come a long way. Maybe we are making progress. This is it's a really good thing.
That's good to know. With Dr. Benjamin Fry kicking off our discussion today on Native America Calling. His new book is titled Rising Above, Language Revitalization in the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. We're going to take a short break, and we have more guests from different parts of Native America who are also going to talk about their language programs and other efforts to foster and encourage Native people to learn their languages. So stay with us, and if you want to join the conversation, maybe you are a native language speaker, you can add to it. 1-800-99-NATIVE. Treaties with the federal government are often derided, but they are important documents that many tribal operations are based on. At least 2 tribes are marking milestone treaties that continue to define their place and identity within the confines of the federal legal system. We'll explore those on the next Native America Calling.
Global business executives, top government officials, diplomats, and indigenous leaders will attend Arctic Encounter 2025, North America's premier Arctic policy and business event. From July 30th to August 1st in Anchorage, Alaska, this international summit convenes voices from across the Arctic and beyond to shape policy, investment, and innovation in the far north. Arctic Encounter is where global decisions meet northern realities. Registration for this global dialogue at arcticencounter.com, who support this show.
You're listening to Native America Calling. We're talking about native languages today, technology, revitalization, and reconnection. And you can join us by calling 1-800-996-2848. Are you learning to speak your native language? Tell us about the process. 1-800-99-NATIVE. Our next guest joins us from Kenai, Alaska, Joel Isaac. He is the Director of Language and Culture for the Kanaitse Indian Tribe. He is Denaakk'e Athabaskan. Joel, good morning, and welcome to Native America Calling.
Having me on the show.
Well, Joel, I understand you are building an app to teach the Denaakk'e language. It sounds really, really exciting. Tell us more about how it will help learners.
We are working on a platform that allows us to insert audio, images, do different types of games that are interactive, that the student can record themselves and see their vocal waveform. It also allows us to put audio from a first language speaker into it. And the goal for it is really to provide people access who don't have the opportunity to physically come to language classes. And then it also functions as a learning management system so that those of us who are teachers can go on the back end and see how students are progressing. We could listen to their audio and provide feedback. And so it really combines a lot of different types of teaching tools into one platform. And one of the things I really like about it is that it's something that we don't give up our ownership of content when we put this together. So it's basically a skeleton frame that we're able to input our own data into while still retaining the rights to our data.
Okay. Now, this sounds like an app that could potentially be scaled to other tribes and other languages. Is that possible?
It is. The one of the other things why we chose this app is that we didn't have to build it. We have purchased a license to it. It's a company out of Canada. Can 8 Virtual Lab is what we used. And so for us, having a limited number of people working, we decided rather than trying to learn how to be computer coders, that we would find something that already existed and then be able to have it be user-friendly for us as non-tech people to be able to use and build the back end of uploading everything into it.
Okay. Now, who's your target audience for the app? Are these primarily adult learners? And I'm also curious to know, is the whole learning process, is it all in the app, or are there supplemental resources to go with it?
Our target audience is our tribal members and students in public schools, and then we also teach university classes. So what we're just starting up in the fall this year is doing a brokered class through the university so that people can come on site at our tribal language center and take classes. And if they need to, they can get credit through the university. Most of us who work at the Denaakk'e Language Institute are credentialed to teach at the university, but this year we're working to teach at the tribe. And then the language app allows us to have that kind of be the at-home learning part for the homework. And then my tribe is opening up a tribal charter school in the fall, and it's something we don't have enough teachers to be in all these classrooms at the same time. And so we have laptops that have the app loaded on it with headsets that are ready to go so that students can kind of go at their own pace. And then we have tribal members that live across the country. And so that's our kind of third target audience right now, is to have our tribal members be able to have access to language wherever they live.
Joel, how many fluent speakers of the Denaakk'e language are there?
The smaller it gets, the harder it is to track. We're at 5 or under right now, and the youngest is 80.
5 or under, as in 5 people?
5 people, yeah. We have about 5 first language speakers left.
Elders, I imagine they're vital in the process for making this all work and this language instruction successful. What do they say about the technology, the app?
It's something that they think is cool. It's also something that is not their main focus. So we don't spend a lot of time on the app with our elders. They do get to see it, and it is something that they're excited about. They can see how it does kind of broadcast a wider net of opportunity. But we spend more time on the land with our elders or in the recording studio than we do on the computer with them.
Now, Joel, what else has to happen to keep native languages thriving? Obviously, this app sounds like a great idea. We heard from Dr. Fry, and he's writing books and creating programs as well. But what are some other possible solutions to get our languages right where they need to be in terms of people really speaking them every day, just in casual conversation?
So one of the things that when I talk about the app, I often describe it as it is a tool in our toolbox of language revitalization. It's not a silver bullet. And so it's one tool. We have a multi-system approach. We're working on different literacy opportunities for students. Our goal is to have 200 books per grade level. We're not there yet, but we're starting to push that 200 number that we've been working on. To get people speaking, we also need spaces for our language to be spoken in, and that's one of the goals of bringing our language classes into the tribe. For adult learners, we're offering classes through Zoom so that people can come in and still have kind of a live community environment. And then working really, I think one of the key things is having our students, our kids, again, being able to educate them is really where our language will come back to us. The kids bring life back into our language and into our homes. And so it's a very exciting time for our tribe to be able to start working on the school, because that's a key piece of having a family unit learn language is often through the kids.
Now, you had a chance for kids to actually pilot the app at this point or test it out, and if so, what kind of feedback have they given you?
We have showed it to a couple of kids and a couple of youth, and it is something that they're excited about. I think that's one of the pieces that engaging with young people, this is a tool that is helpful for them to kind of see how it fits into their daily lives. And I'm excited to see what it looks like when we have a classroom of students using it. And that should be happening in the fall. So we started wrapping up the build out of the app in June. So we're just getting ready to roll it out in full force come this school year.
Well, Joel, good luck with all these efforts. They sound very promising, and really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all this great information with our listeners today. The phone number is 1-800-996-2848. That's the phone line to our studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And if you'd like to comment on today's show, if you'd like to provide some insight, maybe you've recently learned your native language, or maybe you've always known your native language and you've got some insights or some ideas with regard to how other people can learn the language as well. We'd love to hear from you today. Just give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. We have another guest in Alaska, Mariah Pitka, who joins us from Anchorage, Alaska, where she is today, but she's originally from Galena, Alaska, and she is the executive director of the Doyon Foundation, which is based in Fairbanks, Alaska, and she's also a member of the Loudon tribe. Mariah, good morning. It's great to have you on the show today as well.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. Now, you have a grant to build new language learning methods, one of which is a game. Now, I understand it's not out yet, but tell us how it will work.
Yeah, so we just were awarded a Department of Education, a NEP grant, about 10 days ago. So it's new. We're still sort of navigating through what's going to happen, but the purpose of the grant is to create a Denaakk'e language game. Initially, when we wrote the grant, the character that it would have been based under was Molly of Denali. So with we're not quite sure now if we'll still use the Molly of Denali character or if we'll be creating a new native character. But it's really a tool to engage our younger learners, so K through 5th grade. To get them to begin to speak their language.
Okay, I want to ask more about how the game is going to work, but you made a reference to Molly of Denali. So is this with regard to the cuts, to public media? There's some concern as to whether or not you'll be able to access that brand, Molly of Denali?
Correct. So when we wrote the grant 2 years ago, and submitted it, it was really based on using Molly and Tui in the game. Now it's unclear, and like I said, we've only just been awarded the grant, so we're still sort of navigating. We've been working with GBH to figure out if it's possible, and if it's not, then we'll simply create a new character to base the game after.
Okay. Well, tell us more about the game now. Is it a board game? Is it a video game, electronic? How will people actually play it?
So there'll be an app. It'll be created. We've got content creators and digital creators that we'll work with to create this game and get it out to, we're partnering with the Yukon Kaikuk School District. So we'll be working with their students to sort of pilot the game and to engage with their younger learners. So it's an app. Anyone, we would encourage anyone to use it. We've got other apps that we've created that are free for anyone to use. I was listening to the gentleman from Kanaitsi speak, and it's exciting to hear that they're doing that as well. We've done that. We have 10 languages that are housed in the Doyon region, and they all have an app on our website that anyone can use to learn their language.
Now, we heard from our other guests with regard to the challenges that they face with their languages and just a low number of speakers. How about the Denaakk'e language? Are there many fluent speakers, and if so, where are they based?
So our best estimate for the Denaakk'e language fluent speakers is about 150, and that's our largest language. So I mentioned that we have 10 languages that are housed within our region. We know that in 2003, when Mary Deacon passed, she was our last known fluent Halakachuk speaker. So it's happening rapidly that these languages are sort of disappearing. So we feel like we're always trying to catch up. But Denaakk'e is certainly our largest, along with Gwich'in, that have the most fluent speakers.
And what are we heard boarding school era was a huge factor in many Native people not being able to speak their language. We had Dr. Fry suggest some other possible reasons as well. What are your thoughts, Mariah?
Yeah, I think those two suggestions are spot on. It's interesting. My grandparents spoke fluent Denaakk'e. They had 11 children, and none of them spoke. And I can only sort of attribute that to them going off to schools and not being, in the home base for their entirety. My dad went off to Vietnam. I had aunts and uncles that went to boarding schools outside of Galena. And then when they came back, it wasn't, there was more English being spoken, more sort of Western ways being introduced versus using the Denaakk'e language to communicate every day. So I think the other two gentlemen were spot on in their suggestions of sort of how things went away. And then it's only been recently, so in 2009 was when Doyon Foundation started our language program. And then 3 years later, in 2012, Doyon Limited began aggressively funding that program. And just, with this new grant, it's a $2.7 million 3-year grant that we've just been awarded. So I feel like it's only been really recently that we have begun sort of attacking the downfall of our languages.
And what are you hearing from community members? A $2.7 million grant, but it's for 3 years. What is the appetite? What is the desire for programs like this that you're hearing from people? And ultimately, what's it going to take long term? I mean, grants are great and these programs and games, but I imagine this is all just part of a master plan.
Yeah, I think, we're very excited. Everyone is very excited around us. We've had a lot of great feedback from speakers, from teachers. We administered 2 other grants as well. One of them just ended. It was called the Mentor Apprentice Program, where we took basically our elders came in and taught our apprentices, so teachers, and then those teachers turned into language teachers to teach within schools. So there's a lot of excitement. What it really takes on our part is our elders. We have to foster our elders and protect them and protect the languages and record, work with, spend time out in the communities to really understand the different aspects of how we continue to grow the language. Learning our culture, learning our songs. I composed a song for my grandma a few years back, and it was one of the most healing things I'd ever done. And it really sort of sparked my desire to continue to learn and to teach my own children. I have 7 kids. So just teaching them. In my home, we use just everyday phrases, and they pick them up. I have a 2-year-old that took it to school, and his teacher called and asked me if the word "ka" meant anything in our house, and I said, "Well, what's the reference of it?" And he said, "When another little kid comes to play with his toys, he tells the little kid "ka," and I said, "Oh, he's saying cut, and that means don't touch my stuff." So it's it works. I mean, speaking your language, even just everyday phrases, it works.
Well, I really like how you mentioned just the spirituality component, the healing component of it.
Yeah.
It's such a big factor as well. Mariah, you mentioned recording. What's that process? Do you take elders and you invite them into a recording studio and you just have them talk?
It could be as simple as taking your phone and going to them. We wouldn't generally ask an elder to come to us. We try to go to them, to be in their space. Fairbanks houses an organization called Denaakk'e that is really geared for our elders. So going into them and sitting with them and just listening to their stories and asking questions and attending cultural events. We have potlatches and stick dances and things like that and listening to them talk and recording those things, because if you don't, and they'll begin to go away. Like, unfortunately, we're seeing that with some of our smaller languages.
All right.
So really being diligent.
Mariah, we've got to take another break, but we'll be right back in just a moment.
Yat nts khahot edo del gido nen sakis nengi yego betzil do del nzen got adan ane ent ego eya hot atel khahot del nil go eya at akhida which hadis nzen go azal epelnahas ago oku eya na del kedo del Indian healthcare provider besh outed in sakisi beach de healthcare.gov/coverage besh baudile 1-800-318-2596. A message from Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
You're tuned to Native America Calling. We're talking about native languages today. What can you share about the ways people learn their own languages? Give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. We have Mariah Pitka on the line. She is the executive director of the Doyon Foundation in Fairbanks, Alaska. And Mariah, I'm sorry, I was just so excited listening to you describe this game and just the whole process that you're working through. I lost track of time. I didn't give you enough time to answer that last question with regard to how you're able to record elders. So please continue and finish your thoughts before I bring in our next guest.
Oh, I think we covered it. I feel like it's one of the most important tools that we can keep and continue to do, is to just take the time to record our elders, to be present with them. They're so precious. So taking the time to go to them and to spend time with them, record their stories, record the songs, using and then continuing to use the language with them. It makes them feel good. And it's the easiest tool that we can get, right? And it's free. Like, you just go and sit with your elders.
All right. Well, Mariah, best of luck going forward. Really excited to learn more about this game. Is there any information available online right now where listeners can learn a little bit more?
Follow us on at doyonfoundation.com. We're on social media. Like I said, we've just been awarded this 10 days ago. We are looking for a program manager. The job closes on Friday, so if anyone's interested in working in this very important field, we do have that position open currently. But as soon as we know more, I'm happy to come back and to continue to share anything that we know. But we're very new into it. We were awarded the grant, and it had already started. Like, our period had already started. So we were awarded about a month after. But anyway, we're just getting ready and working with the content creators right now.
All right. Thanks again, Mariah. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
We have a fourth guest who I would like to now introduce. His name is Jamie Jacobs, and he's the managing curator of the Rock Foundation collection at the Rochester Museum and Science Center. He is Tonawanda Seneca Turtle Clan. Hello, Jamie. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. We're learning a lot about different language programs from different parts of Native America, Alaska, North Carolina, and I had a chance to listen to a podcast, and you talked about a connection to your great-grandmother that sparked your initial curiosity about learning language and culture. Let's start there. Tell us about it.
Grandmother. She was a first language speaker. She was a ceremonial person in our community. She lived to be 96 years old, so she had quite a bit of experience working with our community, working in ceremonies. But her father was a chief, her grandfather was a chief, her grandmother was a clan mother, which is a female type of leadership in our community. So she was very knowledgeable about the history and the language, and she knew quite a bit. And when I was in my 20s, in that time of my life, I was looking for something to find my place on this earth, I guess, and try to fill in some time that I had. And I had thought that, well, maybe I could go and sit with my great grandmother, because there's a lot of things that I could learn. And that's really where it started. I grew up around ceremonies all my life. I grew up singing the songs, but I was never really a participant in the invocations or the speeches or things like that. And that's kind of where I turned to my grandmother for, because she knew quite a bit about it, and I was very excited at the time.
Okay, now this led for you to ultimately embark on a mission to find and document Seneca words, and that led you to Canada, where you began researching Jesuit dictionaries. Tell us about that.
Well, so working with my grandmother, because she was, very experienced and very, knowledgeable, she would give me words that she thought were kind of dying out even in, when her and I were working together. So she would also give me words that I just didn't understand, the context of, even though she would explain it. So what happened was I started really diving into like the linguistics of our language. And I worked with Dr. Wallace Chafe out of USC. And it was Dr. Wallace Chafe in 2012 who actually introduced me to this idea that Jesuits documented our language in the 1600s. So that caught my interest. And then from there, I started seeing words in these Jesuit dictionaries that I had never heard before. And I had started seeing words for ideas and actions and concepts that I had never seen before, because it had just been so long since our ancestors had, done or made some of these things. So that's where I really got this idea of decolonizing our language. So, for example, our word for money, it's an indigenous word. It's a word from our language, but we didn't have paper dollars. We didn't have silver coins in, the 1500s, the 1400s. But, what did it mean prior to that? So if I asked my great-grandmother, who was very knowledgeable, first language speaker, she may not remember because it had been so long since it had changed. But what the Jesuit dictionaries can give us is it gives us a really clear answer sometimes on what these words meant prior to these foreign concepts or these foreign objects replacing such things. And here, our word for money is pronounced owista. And prior to it being, used for money, it actually meant fish scale.
That's fascinating. And there's a large Native-led nonprofit that uses that name. They work with economic development, the Owista Corporation. That's the connection, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I see that. Yep.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah. Let's take a caller, Jamie, and then we'll talk some more. This is Stephanie, who is listening on Keeley Radio in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Hello, Stephanie. You're on the air.
Hi, I'm Betty Washday. Thank you. I like the topic on the language, and I just wanted to share my insight as a language learner and active language speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stephanie, I understand you have children and they're fully immersed in the language.
Yes, and grandchildren as well.
How did that work? Was this something that your family made a conscious effort to accomplish, or did it just happen organically?
Well, a conscious effort because I grew up in Wakamani, but my Unchi is from Calico, and so I was grateful that I was raised with my little hawk Tioshbai who really spoke the language. And so as a mother, I start realizing even though we don't feel confident in our level of speaking, it's important that we continue to use every word that we can and fully immerse that into conversations, and then also visual aids and different learning styles and techniques for our little ones.
Now, do you have tools and resources there in Pine Ridge that you're able to draw from?
Actually, we have a international organization. It's called the Unchi Wichoye Ahoki Papi Omashke Ichiapi. And our website, we offer one-on-one classes. We teach Lakota and Dakota. We do full immersion. We do one-on-ones. We also do teaching methodologies. And as an educator, I really can't emphasize enough for our people to, and the caller that was on, he's exactly right. When we define our language, it's interesting because Indigenous languages are relationship-based, whereas English language is property-based. And that means the proper English, which is the Queen's English, and that is property-based. So when you look at our Indigenous languages, they're relationship-based. So when for example, I'm out here at Calico, and unfortunately we lost my one of our grandmothers, and I remember when I would hear them speak, they're speaking about interrelations between each of the objects that they're speaking about. So when a child hears that, especially during those early formative years, neurologically and physiologically, that stimulates their thought process. So as we know, multilingual speakers are very advanced. So when we speak with our children, it stimulates their neurons. They're able to absorb that, and they're actually seeing action and motion. And those are the different types of learning styles and behaviors that are most prominent for Indigenous peoples.
All right. Stephanie, I hope you give your contact information to our producers, because I think we need to bring you back for a show and talk a little bit more at length here. You've got a lot of knowledge, and I know a little bit. Wopalatonka for you to call in today. All right. Take care, Stephanie. Jamie, back to you. That was interesting. Native languages are more relationship driven as opposed to maybe European languages, which are more property driven. Can you relate there?
Definitely. So in Iroquoian language, we use a lot of terms such as cousins, brothers, elder brothers, younger brothers, which is probably actually where the term young white brother came from, because when the French came, they came to St. Lawrence River, which leads right into the Haudenosaunee territory in the early to mid-1500s. So actually the word Canada is actually an Iroquoian word from our language, because it's actually supposed to be pronounced Canada, which is our word for village, because they were pointing to the village when they first met the first French explorers on the St. Lawrence River. And that's what they were telling them, was that that's where their family was. So when we look through all the historical records when dealing with the French or the British, we always use family terms to relate to them. So, for example, even in our ceremonies, our ceremonial leadership, they refer to themselves as cousins, even though they're not actually blood-related cousins. The same way with our leadership and our chiefs. So when I make reference to my chief who represents my clan, I refer to him as my uncle, even though he may not be my actual uncle. So we have quite a bit of that, like in the Haudenosaunee language, the Iroquoian language family.
Okay. Yeah, I can relate to that. I know a lot of Pueblo language. We say that uncles and aunts, everybody kind of from that generation is referred to it in that regard. Jamie, we need to talk about the technology here also, because these Jesuit dictionaries from the 1600s, what did it take to actually decipher and read those documents?
So there's probably about 8 booklets. 4 of the booklets are legible. They're very clear, but 4 of them had water damage, and they were illegible because they just had been faded from the atmosphere and then water damage. So what I did was I applied for the 2024 Henry Luce Fellowship through the First Nations Development Institute. And my goal was to be able to afford technology to where I could photograph these faded pages of the Jesuit dictionaries with infrared and ultraviolet cameras. So I was able to do that, even though I only heard of the concept because of other dictionaries and other ancient manuscripts. I just thought, well, maybe I could apply it to this, even though I'm an amateur. So what I did was I used my fellowship funds to purchase a forensic camera that can switch out between UV and infrared. And with the UV lens, I was able to actually photograph the faded pages to where now we can actually read them, because the ink fluoresces under the UV light. And even though you may not see it with your naked eye, well, there's traces of ink still left in the paper, and that's what the UV catches. So I was able to do that. So now I have the other 4 booklets from the 1660s to the 1700s that I can actually sit down and start reading again and start pulling out words, ancient words or words of continuity, ceremonial words that maybe are still around, or maybe they've changed over the years, and then I can actually re-implement some of these back into our lexicon and in our communities.
And how will that work? So are you taking these words, are you creating some sort of a database or a glossary of terms that you're able to share with others?
Yeah, so that's the goal. Is I'm going to create something tangible, either it be a book or a dictionary or a lexicon, specifically around this particular area of the Jesuit dictionaries, and then present that to the community. So what I want to do is I don't want to just print the Jesuit dictionaries word for word, because that's already been done in other areas. But what I want to do is I want to make it so that our community can understand them, and then what they can do is disseminate them back into the culture to where they should be.
And what are you hearing up to this point from community members who are familiar with this project that you're working on? Are they excited?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially like in the food sovereignty area. Our ancient ancestors used to cook with clay pots, but then what happens is the brass pot replaces that in the early 1600s. And what happens is it doesn't just replace a tangible object; it replaces a whole intergenerational knowledge system, because making a clay pot isn't easy, but it was also done by our women. And when you replace that object with a foreign object, well, now you replace this generational knowledge that existed among women, and now the women get replaced, and their respect gets less. So with these words, we're using not only to just bring back, words themselves, but also concepts, because that's important, because our villages only lasted in one area for about 10 to 15 years, and then they'd have to move because of firewood, because of resources. So what happens is they're using clay pots to raise the next generation of decision makers among the women, because their decision counts when it comes to deciding a new village site, because they got to have clay to make the clay pots. But when you replace that with a brass pot, well, what do? What happens? Well, what happens is you're replacing the women who are making those decisions also.
Okay. It's all interconnected, Jamie. You really explain it. It's the one thing I'm really getting from you and the other guests here. These are just all interconnected issues. Wonderful conversation. Jamie, good luck with your project, and please come back on the show when you move along more and you learn more and you want to share more information with our listeners, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, all of our guests, wonderful conversation. We appreciate them all. Jamie Jacobs, Mariah Pitka, Joel Isaac, and Dr. Benjamin Fry. And with that, we are out of time, unfortunately, but please check us out on Facebook. Go to our website, nativeamericacalling.com. Let us know what you liked about this show and what you're interested in for future shows as well. You can always comment and suggest as well. And please don't forget, join us again tomorrow for a conversation about tribes marking important milestones for the treaties that guide their paths centuries later. Until then, I'm your host, Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Support comes from AirTalk Wireless, where individuals who qualify for the Tribal Lifeline program receive an iPhone or Samsung device, unlimited data, calls and texts, and international calling. Learn more at airtalkwireless.com/NAC. Minutes from downtown Anchorage, the Alaska Native Heritage Center is more than a museum. It's where Alaska Native traditions, languages, and arts come alive. There's always something new at the Alaska Native Heritage Center who support this show. More at alaskanative.net.
Hamitaki piki. Nithawachi chunku oapi glukinio. La kolochoch onkiapi okihi yellow. Otechi kechana. Heuntuakichi wogalakayo. La kolzani wawokie o wogalakayo. Nishleliayo healthcare.gov. Coverage Nishlil mas aphayo 1-800-318-2596. Le wot khaneki Medicare to Medicaid or tietahi apelo.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Quantic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.